Hey everyone, we're going to talk about a random topic while I play a random game, Gears Tactics, on the PC. It just came out, it's part of Game Pass, that's why I was able to get it for free. Since I already have Game Pass on the Xbox One X, I could play a lot of these games on PC, especially these PC exclusives. It's pretty fun. Played the first level, played about an hour, and here's some gameplay footage. But I wanted to talk about electric vehicles in general and why they are awesome. I'm going to talk about my experience a little bit with, I don't have a fully electric car. I have a plug-in hybrid. It's a Chevy Volt. And this vehicle has changed everything for me. I'm totally sold on electric vehicles now. My car only goes about 50 miles on a charge. After 50 miles, I have to plug it back in. It takes about 4 hours. But, if you have a charger at home, which, I have at my parents' house, I don't have it in my apartment. But, if you drive less than 50 miles a day and just charge it at home, that plug-in hybrid could basically be a full-on electric car for you. And then because you have the gas backup, you can go on really long trips and never have to worry about anything, and you have that full confidence. So right now, electric cars are not for everybody. They're a little bit more expensive generally. And if you want to get a used electric car, you might have to make some sacrifices. But this industry with electric vehicles is changing so quickly, so rapidly, that literally every year the situation changes entirely. I got my Chevy Volt in 2018, and it was summer 2018, and since then so much has changed. I mean, in every aspect, basically. There's more electric cars available. Used ones are a lot cheaper, and now you could get full electric cars for, a lot cheaper now. And yeah, the charging infrastructure is so much better. The technology is improving so rapidly, so quickly. So I want to talk about 4 specific things about what I like about electric vehicles. I hope to do more EV videos in the future. And let's begin. So number 1, what I love about electric cars is that you can charge anywhere, literally anywhere. I was on a trip from like LA or like around there to Mammoth. Quite a long trip. It's over 4 hours, 5 hours, something like that. Might have ended up even being like 6 hours, but that's quite a drive. And I was just amazed by driving in the desert. You see nothing for miles. You might literally not even see, any buildings or anything for an hour or so. And then you pass maybe a small gas station, what have you. But you never lose sight of those power lines carrying electricity from, across, and from different energy sources across the United States. Even when you're driving in the middle of the desert, you might see a gas station, every hour or every other hour or something like that, but you never lose sight of these power lines. And that made me realize that, the electricity infrastructure is already there in the United States. I mean, you probably can't find too many places where electricity doesn't exist in the U.S. I mean, I'm sure if you go out in the woods in the middle of nowhere, in certain places, you might not have it. But even then, you could go camping somewhere, and a lot of camping sites, like RV sites, they have plugs. So if you want to get an electric car, I think this is so cool. You could literally plug it into a wall. If you could find an outlet to charge your cell phone, you could also charge your electric car. And if you want to go on a road trip and you want to stay overnight at an RV place, to camp or what have you, RV sites have plugs, because apparently RVs, I've never actually been on a trip in an RV, so I don't know exactly how it works, but RVs need to hook up as well, for their sewage, but they also plug up for electricity. I'm assuming they just have a small battery for, cooking or what have you. Obviously not to drive. I don't know of any fully electric RVs, but I think that's so cool that electric vehicles can take advantage of those plugins as well. And pretty much every RV place that I know of that I've seen online, they'll have a outlet, so you can charge, like a normal, like a normal plug, 120 volt outlet. But a lot of these places, they actually have like 240 volt, 50 amp, 80 amp plugs that can charge your vehicle 20, 30, maybe even 40 miles an hour, plugging in there. I think that's really, really cool. So right now, even if you would only charge at official electric vehicle charging stations, you have, I'm looking at my notes here, there are currently 428, according to the latest official account, of Electrify America charging stations. 428, and those go through almost the entire continental United States, except for North and South Dakota. They're still working on filling that gap. So if you want to go on a long road trip, cross country, it's still a work in progress. I mean, they've just started, but they're building at a rate in California alone of 6 per month. And in the United States as a whole, this one charging company, they are building at a rate of 1.2 a day. So there's one brand new station every day that they're building up. And that doesn't even include, other companies. That's just Electrify America. That doesn't include ChargePoint, EVgo, Volta, and countless others. Those are the really, really big ones. So that's what I like about electric cars, is you can charge anywhere, even at home. And when people compare electric vehicle charging to normal gas stations, well, no matter what, you're always going to have to go to a gas station to fill up your car with gas. You have no choice. But with an electric car, your house or your apartment, if you have a plug, that can be your gas station. So you would never, so you don't actually need like a public place to go to. Even if you live in the middle of nowhere, you have, you could get a used Chevy Bolt right now for under 20 grand, and that goes over 200 miles. Let's say you live in the middle of nowhere, you can still drive a 100-mile radius and be totally fine if you can charge it at home. And then you could drive to somebody else's house, a friend's house, and charge at their place if they got a plug too. So it's like the options are endless. You're not limited to the same constraints as a gas car. It's, we kind of take it for granted because gas cars have had 100 years to 100 years to build up their infrastructure. Electricity has been around since the 1800s, and that infrastructure is already there. And it doesn't really take too much, to add on to that. I mean, because you could literally park at somebody's house, a friend's house, or a family member's house, and just charge there in their garage, and that works. Just a dryer outlet, so you don't even need to wait on these companies. Number 2. The next big thing I love about electric vehicles is that it uses no gas or oil. And so that means that there's no oil changes. Normally, I forget what the official recommendation is, every 2,500 or 3,000 miles, every 3 months or 3,000 miles, you have to get your oil changed for your car. And yeah, you could do that yourself. I've never done it myself. I'm not really a big car person, but I would pay somebody to do it. But that is one less thing you have to do. And those are all, oil is a toxic thing. You have to dispose of it properly. It's hazardous and everything. You can't just dump it down the drain. That it takes time. There's car gurus that love getting their hands dirty with mechanical things. I've never been a mechanical person. I just don't understand it, but I think that's one cool thing. That's one less thing you have to worry about. Even if you get a really cheap electric car, Chevy Spark for $5 grand, it goes, 86 miles, I think. That car doesn't use any oil. And even my car, Chevy Volt, which only goes 50 miles on the battery, the official manual I just checked a few days ago recommends getting your oil changed not every 3 months or even every 6 months, but they recommend just changing every 2 years. Every 2 years, changing your oil. And that's on a plug-in hybrid that uses a battery, most of the time, whenever you can plug in. And even if you never use gas, really you're just changing your oil so it doesn't go bad, I guess. But you have to use synthetic oil. The other part about that is you don't use any gas. And that is awesome because gas is expensive. Gas is tied to the cost of oil. There's local taxes, federal taxes, state taxes, and so you're paying a lot of money, but electricity really doesn't change as far as pricing. If you look at a chart of the cost of electricity in your area, historical chart, it's pretty constant. Gas, on the other hand, there's so many variables and so many hands involved. You have to scout out a location, and you have to, drill it out of the ground, and then you have to take that and you have to take it to a facility to refine it. And then that refined gas goes, has to be delivered to your local gas station. I've heard some gas stations, like those big Costco gas stations, they might have half a dozen fill-ups every day because that's how much gas we consume. And I think that's so cool that you don't have to rely on that, and it's so much cheaper. Every year, California has these crazy fires. I know on the East Coast, they have a lot of hurricanes and everything. You always see people flooding those, no pun intended, but people getting in line for 4 or 5 hours to fill up their gas tanks before they ditch town. You don't have to do that with an electric vehicle. You can just leave whenever you want. You just fill up at home. You don't have to wait on gas to be delivered to your local gas station. You can just charge up at home. You don't have to go to a gas station. And the price of electricity, when you compare it to gasoline, as far as driving your vehicle, it only costs about $1 or $1.10 a gallon, $1.10 a gallon in the U.S. to fill up your car with electricity. That's pretty cheap. In California, like a year ago, I think a couple of years ago, I saw it was like a high of $5 in some areas. More recently, before this crisis, it was over $4. And yeah, gas is a lot cheaper now. It's about $2.20, $2.40, something like that in my area. Haven't gone out too much, but that, even though that's so much cheaper than how gas is normally, that's still a lot more expensive than electricity. My third favorite thing about electric vehicles is that they are cheaper. As I mentioned, you don't have any gas, you don't have any oil. Engines don't have thousands and thousands of moving parts. They only have, I can't remember, a dozen moving parts, maybe even less. There's really not much to it. You don't have to worry about spark plugs or, all that maintenance, exhaust, transmission. It's just so much simpler, mechanically speaking. And so that's less parts that can break down, less maintenance, and even with brakes, because electric vehicles capture the kinetic energy in your car as you brake. It takes that kinetic energy and uses it to recharge the battery in real time as you're driving. So if you're driving down a hill, if you live on top of a hill and, or you just drive up a hill and then you drive back down, you're relying on your brakes more as you go down that hill so you don't speed up, and it just so happens you're recharging the vehicle when you do that, and I think that's really, really cool. So it's cheaper to own. Electric vehicle is cheaper to own for the life of the car. You don't have to worry about oil changes every 3 months or 3,000 miles. You don't have to fill up with gas, which is taxed like crazy. And that brings me to my fourth and final point, is that it's green. At this point, there have been enough studies that I've read, and you can look up studies online as well. You don't have to look at, quote unquote, biased sources like spokespeople for these electric car companies. You can look at unbiased third parties that have studied this issue, and I recommend understanding. If you read an opinion piece online, I've noticed I've read some stories where they just kind of throw out all these things that sound kind of crazy. It's like, oh, electric vehicles are, they're not really good for the environment. They're actually the most polluting gas car is actually a lot greener than the most efficient electric car. And then you find out, you look at the author and who they work for, what organization. It's like, yeah, they work for the oil and gas industry. It's no different than if you remember learning about, or if you were alive, in the 70s and 80s, when cigarette companies, or even before that, cigarette companies were putting out material that was promoting cigarettes and cigarette uses, and smoking, and saying how it's actually healthy for you. And then it turns out that they knew all along that it wasn't healthy, and they were benefiting, of course, from selling tobacco. And the same thing is happening now, where you have these oil and gas companies that have an incentive to keep selling really inefficient, polluting gas vehicles, trying to put out that material out there. But if you look at scholarly reports and look at the data and look at all the information and analysis out there, is that gas cars in every case in every state are going to be more detrimental to the environment than electric cars. Now, sometimes I see that electric car, people say, oh, well, electric cars get their electricity from coal. And in a lot of places that's true. It's not true in California. California, as I understand it, doesn't use any coal. There's only one coal power plant in the state of California, as far as I understand, and it's not used very much. It's shutting down soon. But even if you live in a place like West Virginia that gets the majority of its electricity from coal, you would need a gas car that gets about, I think, 86 to 90 mpg to be, to be as green as an electric car. And yeah, right, you're never going to have that happen in a gas car. Getting over 80 mpg, even over 60 mpg. That's just crazy. I read a report from McGill University that just came out not too long ago, in the last few months, and it linked particulate matter from car exhaust to brain cancer. And I mean, yeah, it's not really that big of a surprise. Of course, if you could literally, die if you leave your car running and, in your garage and the garage door is closed. I mean, if you ever saw the movie Midsummer, that's one of the first scenes that happens, is the cars are running in the garage, and it kills this family. It's a really, really good movie. Really, really intense opening scene, though. But gas cars are polluting. It's not good to breathe this stuff in. We know it's bad for us. There's enough studies that show that it's bad for us. And electric cars, even though they use other materials with the batteries, those batteries, you could reuse those batteries. You can recharge those batteries. But with a gas car, you have to continuously burn gas for it just to run, just to turn it on. And just, even if you're at a stoplight, or you're cold outside, or you're just listening to the radio, you still have to burn gas to keep that car on, not even moving, but just on. And with an electric car, you could just recharge it. You don't have to throw away the battery. And even if the battery loses a lot of its capacity, or some parts go bad, you could recycle those precious minerals. You can, they could work on the battery and refit it, in another car, repair the dead cells, or they could put it in another case, like with houses, tie it to a solar panel system and use it to store energy that way. So those things can be recycled. So there's enough evidence out there, enough reporting that actually shows that through the life of a vehicle, that an electric car actually is cleaner in every case, not just with air pollution, but yeah, even though eventually, hopefully, we can get the United States to look more like Europe, where our cities are more walkable. We don't have to use single, occupancy vehicles just to get anywhere, just to go to the grocery store, because that's really inefficient. That's not good for the environment. It's better just to walk. It's healthier. You get some fresh air, move your legs. That's always better, but you can't compare an electric car to a bike and say, because the bike is better, that's why we can't use a gas car. That's kind of an unfair comparison. But when you can compare electric cars to gas cars, electric cars win every time. So, in conclusion, those are my 4 top reasons why I love electric vehicles and why I'm a huge fan. I'm going to try to do some more videos, talk about more specifically about, deeper detail about the different types of electric vehicle charging, how that works. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of electric vehicles. Let me know what you think about EVs. Let's get a conversation going. And yeah, thanks for watching.